Support for this show comes from Lead Quizzes. Lead Quizzes helps you easily set up high-converting quizzes to capture and qualify leads for your business. Visit leadquizzes.com/podcast to get a 14-day free trial today.
By the time we hit $500,000 in revenue, which you say we got there quickly, I think it took a long time. It took 5 years. 1994, I realized when I had 11 employees, one bad apple spoils the whole bunch, and I probably had 9 bad apples. So I made a tough decision to get rid of everybody. I did a clean slate. I sat everybody down in the morning and I said, as your leader, I've let you down. I've not found the right people, trained you, given you the love and support that you need to be successful. And it's time to part ways. I don't know what else to do to rebuild the business, but to start from scratch.
From Lead Quizzes, it's Journey to 7 Figures, a show about entrepreneurs and the stories behind how they grew their business to 7 figures and beyond. We cover the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the lessons they learned along the way. Welcome back to Journey to 7 Figures. Today I'm interviewing Brian Scudamore, founder and CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. At just 19 years old, Brian pioneered the industry of professional junk removal with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, turning a chore people avoid into an exceptional customer service experience. Then he scaled that success into 3 more home service-based brands, Wow One Day Painting, You Move Me, and Shack Shine, under the OTE Brands banner. So they've grown to over $309 million in revenue and have over 250 franchisee owners around the world. Brian, I'm really excited to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeremy. Glad to be here.
All right, cool. So let's take it back to the beginning. So you started this when you were in college?
Yeah, I started it just before being in college. I was 18 years old and was trying to find a way to pay for college, and my business became that way.
Awesome. So this was back in 1989 when you started it. Can you give us a little bit of just like how did you come up with the idea and kind of what were you doing at the time?
Of course. So there I was, one course short of graduation from high school. My friends were all going to college and I had this fear of missing out. So I wanted to join them. I met with the university and talked my way in without a high school diploma. And then there I was trying to figure out, how was I going to pay for school? My parents weren't going to fund my college education, considering I didn't do so well in high school. So I had to come up with the money. And I was in a McDonald's drive-thru. I saw this beat up old pickup truck with plywood side panels built up on the box. The truck was filled with junk. And I looked at that truck and went, there's my idea. I'm going to start hauling junk. And bought this pickup truck with my life savings of $700. Started driving down alleys, laneways, would see that someone had a pile of junk, would offer to haul it away for a fee. And that basic business model grew into ultimately something that, while it funded my college education, it also inspired me to drop out 3 years later. I was learning more about business by running a business more than I was studying from textbooks, and made that bold decision to drop out. And I say bold because my father is a liver transplant surgeon, and he wasn't so fond of the idea of me leaving school, but he's certainly on side with the decision today.
I can imagine. Very cool. So you spent $700 on this truck. Did you do any advertising when you began? Like, I know you guys have the number on the sides of the truck now, but was it all just literally you'd go and find junk and offer to haul it for people?
Yeah, it was mostly pounding the pavement. When someone had a pile of junk, we'd knock on their door and offer to haul it away. And advertising wasn't something we would end up doing till many years later. I mean, we'd be in local newspapers and put in little classified ads back in the day when those existed, but we didn't spend a lot on advertising. In fact, we learned early on, a couple of years into the business, the power of free press. We ended up calling up our local newspaper and they put us on the front page, the Vancouver province. They had our phone number, which was on the side of our truck on our billboards. And it ended up being free press that yielded 100 phone calls within 24 hours, tons of jobs out of it. And it really started to have us realize that growth could come quickly if you did some of the right marketing and PR tactics.
Awesome. So you guys got pretty quickly to 5 trucks, 11 employees, and about $500,000 in revenue. How long did that take you? Was that just by doing like different PR to get in front of people?
Yeah, it was mostly the driving down alleys and laneways and then just adding more trucks. Our trucks became mobile billboards. Our phone number at the time was 738-JUNK, and we were called the Rubbish Boys. And we ended up growing to 5 trucks where these trucks would be billboards across the city, and people would see our phone number. They knew they had junk. They'd call us and we'd come and take it away. But by the time we hit $500,000 in revenue, which you say we got there quickly, I think it took a long time. It took 5 years. 1994, I realized when I had 11 employees, one bad apple spoils the whole bunch, and I probably had 9 bad apples. So I made a tough decision to get rid of everybody. I did a clean slate. I sat everybody down in the morning and I said, as your leader, I've let you down. I've not found the right people, trained you, given you the love and support that you need to be successful. And it's time to part ways. I don't know what else to do to rebuild the business, but to start from scratch. And made the tough decision. We moved on, and I realized that this was a powerful moment for me, going from 5 trucks to 1. It's all I could drive at once. And I said, I got to start finding the right people, treating them right. And we started building a culture that was really all about people.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about some culture some more in this podcast episode, but how did you know that these 9 people were the wrong fit? Like, what did that feel like, and what was that like?
Yeah, the simplest description is I wasn't having fun. I was hiding in a private office. I didn't enjoy coming out and meeting with my team. They were nice enough people. I mean, they're human beings. I believe in, the world is good, but I didn't have people that really saw this as anything more than a job. They were showing up late. They weren't clean cut and professional. And I knew that if I was going to professionalize the junk removal market, I needed a completely different crew.
And then through this time, you had a partner named Jack that you had to part ways with as well?
Yeah, I had a partner early on in the business, and it was one of those things where it's tough building a business on your own, as entrepreneurs know. And sometimes having the camaraderie of someone there beside you is what we choose. So I ended up bringing Jack on board, and he and I were out there building the business together. And I realized, it's my idea. I'm building it my way. I don't know if he really has the same shared passion for growth. He wanted to spend all his time skiing, hanging out with his girlfriend, and it was not a match made in heaven. We were great friends, but we weren't meant to work together. So we parted ways. And, I think the lesson learned there is sometimes we approach a fork in the road, and one of mentorship or one of partnership. And I believe I chose partnership, bringing on a partner when all I really needed was a mentor, someone who could guide and support me to be the wise man in the woods, so to speak. And so I started changing my strategy when I did this on my own and started building confidence. A tool to help me build confidence was calling up other successful entrepreneurs, people that had franchised their businesses. And I would go meet with them for coffee or lunch and pick their brains. And it was one of those things where it really taught me you can get better advice from a lot of people who are experts rather than having often what's a tougher route to go is having a partner.
Interesting. Okay. So you got to this point where you guys were at $500,000 in revenue. You fired 11 employees. You really wanted to define your culture, values that you were going to stand for, and who you're going to hire by. So can you walk me through what that process was like and how you did that?
Yeah. So a few things. One, I started defining the company as it's all about people company. We were going to find the right people and treat them right. Well, how do you know what the right people are? We needed values. I read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and I looked at that book and said, okay, Jim says that for a company to grow and scale, you need to have values that everyone in the company aligns by. And it's more important that you've got values and that they're yours and you own them versus what those values are. So I said to my team at the time, a small team in the rebuild stage, and I said, if we're going to grow, Jim Collins says we need values. What words describe who we already are? Not who we want to be or who we're going to try to be, but who we are today. And we took Post-it notes and we did a little retreat at my parents' summer cottage. And we started putting all these Post-it notes on the windows of the words that we would use to describe us. Then we grouped these 400 Post-it notes into categories. And it happened to be 4 categories: passion, integrity, professionalism, and empathy. And what we realized is this is who we are. And to grow a business based on values, as Jim Collins describes, we need to always be that way. So we would find the right people based on values. If they didn't seem to hold those values, and we realized that we brought the wrong people in, we would make value-based hiring decisions or firing decisions. We're very much a slow to hire, quick to fire type business. And if we saw, someone really doesn't have passion for our growth and what we're building, or they're not displaying integrity, they're not doing what they say they would do, then we get those people out of our business and free them up for a brighter future.
So when you came up with those core values, did you do that with a team that you already felt really solid about, or did you do this by yourself?
Did it with a team that I felt solid about. Now, they were a young team. There were no gray hairs in the room, so to speak. And it was really us figuring things out, which while we were a green team and we really didn't know what we were doing, These were people I called friends. Many of them I still keep in touch with. And Jesse Corzan, one of the early day friends and employees in the business, we were chatting last month. So it's important, I think, to take a team, and even if they're not experienced, to trust the team, to work with them, to create values. You decide, what words are important. Does it resonate? And then stick to those. And that's what we've done.
Awesome.
25 years later, we still have the same values and not a word will ever change.
Awesome. So I think what I heard from here is you guys are probably asking situational based questions and trying to figure out in the hiring process if they're right and you're firing by them. Is there anything that you do in the middle when they're actually working for you to make sure that you're incentivizing these core values and those are being recognized? Is there anything you could share about that?
Yeah. So Ken Blanchard wrote a book years ago, and it's quite a long time ago now, called The 1 Minute Manager. And he talks about 1 minute praise and 1 minute reprimand. To me, I'm not a big reprimand guy, but you give people feedback immediately. If somebody's not living the values, you tell them why. You tell them which value they're not living and give them some feedback. If they're living the values and demonstrating them, you also want to give them that feedback immediately and give them the kudos as to how they're doing such a great job and celebrate the passion or celebrate the empathy. It's important through storytelling to every day tell stories and make sure your teams are aligned with the values that are important to you. And of course, as a leader, so myself being the founder and CEO, it's important for me more than anyone to live and demonstrate the values. Now, I'm human and I make mistakes, but the values are so firmly ingrained in our system that we'll often get people coming up to me and say, Brian, I don't know if that was a pipe-based decision. I don't believe you had passion there, or I believe you didn't have empathy, or whatever the value is that stands out. They'll tell me what's missing. And I love the fact that they can call me on it.
Okay, awesome. All right, Brian. So you mentioned that mentorship was a big thing to you. You said before that joining a group called YEO was one of the most important decisions you made in your life. Can you talk about what impact that had and what that was for you?
Yeah, I joined. It's now called EO. It used to be YEO, the Young Entrepreneur Organization. And I guess all of us started to get old, so they dropped the Y. But EO today is 10,000 plus members worldwide. My business would not be half of what it is, maybe even a tenth of what it is today if it wasn't for EO. The friendship, the mentorship, the support. And I joined in 1996. You had to have $1 million in sales to join. I was actually at 797,000. And the group said to me, you're close enough and we think you'll get there. So I ended up joining EO. And anytime I had a problem, still to this day, I know that I can reach out to someone who's had the same problem and they've solved it. And it can be a personal problem. It can be a business problem. It doesn't matter what it is. But the thing I love about this group is it's a family of entrepreneurs who share openly with each other. Here's how we can solve problems. Here's how we can make things better. And I love that entrepreneurs love to share. And so I've tried to get back in the same way. It was the whole reason I wrote my book, WTF, Willing to Fail, was how can I put some of the stories and lessons that I've learned in my 30-year journey to share with others to help them avoid some of the hard mistakes I've made the hard way.
Awesome. Okay. So we're going to talk about, I believe you met Cameron Harold through that group, who's going to come up a little bit later in our interview. But did he refer you to someone named Paul, who became your first franchisee?
He did. Sounds like you've read the book. So Paul Guy worked for College Pro Painters. And Cameron said, listen, you're looking at franchising your business. You should talk to Paul. He's been an important part of a franchise business for a long time. I think he can help you. And so Paul Guy came on board and was our first franchise owner. And it's funny because Paul was in my company and I get along with almost everybody, but I didn't get along with Paul. He was smart. He was good at what he did, but somehow we would butt heads. He just had a tone about him that seemed condescending, and we'd talk. And I just felt like, why are you against everything I say? But it turns out it was a good leadership moment for me to let someone challenge me and speak up. And one day we just butted heads like two rams on a mountaintop locking horns. And I just said, enough's enough. I went into his office. This is back in the day when we had private offices. We don't today. It's a big open office space. But I went in and I said, it's not working. He said, I don't think it's working either. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I think you should leave. And he said, so you said I'm fired? And I said, yep, you were done. When do you want me to leave? I said, how about now? And I left in a huff and I was frustrated. And I came back 3 days later and he was still there in my company, still in his office. And I'm like, this is the strangest thing ever. But he didn't want to let down his team. And he just wasn't ready to leave. And I came up with this crazy idea. I said, have you ever thought of running the first franchise? What if we put this franchise together in Toronto? You're going back and forth visiting your girlfriend out there. What do you think of moving to Toronto? And he loved the idea. His eyes lit up and sparkled. So did mine. We got excited and he drove a truck across the country, and the rest is history. He ended up doing $1 million in revenue in his first full calendar year, which took me 8 years to get to $1 million. So I realized we were onto something, and was grateful, of course, for Cameron Harold's introduction. And then as we grew, Cameron then comes into the business. He says, while I'm in the same EO forum, he said to me, hey, I'd never work with you. There's no way. He came in on a consulting contract for a few weeks, and 3 weeks later, he's like, okay, this is cool. This is fun. He saw opportunity, and we both locked onto a vision and started to build a great business. And Cameron was here from 2 million to 106 million in revenue, and was so grateful for everything he contributed to where we are today.
Awesome. All right. So when we talk about Cameron, he had some franchise background. That's how he was able to introduce you to Paul. Brian, why did you decide to go down the franchise route versus expanding this yourself?
Was always a fan of Ray Kroc and McDonald's, not necessarily the food, but the model of franchising and people having skin in the game. And Ray Kroc did an amazing job building and developing the entrepreneurial spirit. He helped people grow businesses in their own cities and become these hamburger gurus that were really the leaders and entrepreneurs in their cities that would grow something special. And I wanted the same thing. I wanted to have people have a vested interest in the business, to be building something that they were proud of in their market. So if you've got Alan Reamer, our franchise partner in Philadelphia, he is one of those guys that is so proud of what he's built in that city. He's an EO member, and everyone in that market knows him as the guy. He's really built this great brand alongside of us. So I didn't want it to be Brian's business. I wanted it to be all of us building something much bigger and better together. And the franchising model just made sense.
That's interesting, because you are bringing on people that are building their own business, but it sounds like, or just knowing some of your background, even people that didn't work out or people that left, a lot of them also became like entrepreneurs as well. Is there any reason why you think like you were so good at attracting these people that went off and started their own businesses or had that ownership mentality?
Yeah, I think the vision, the painted picture of what we set out to do. Walt Disney said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And I think that we painted a picture of what seemed impossible, but became possible through a group of great people who believed. And so we got out there and started building these great businesses. And you know what? You lose a great person to go start their own business. It hurts to see that person go, but hallelujah to them for being able to take that entrepreneurial spirit and make it on their own. We've had some people that we've encouraged to leave, and they end up coming back because they realized they didn't want to be a solopreneur and try and build something on their own. They wanted to be a part of a big team, and that, whatever somebody's destiny is and their painted picture for their own future, I think our role as a business is to help encourage and cheerlead them to their own success. So I think we've worked hard at trying to develop great people and develop some inspiration or some aspiration to do great things. And I think the world is about everyone's got a responsibility to make the world a better place, whether it's with us or taking learning from us and doing it on the outside. Support it all.
Awesome. Okay. So you mentioned that you hired Cameron as your COO when you guys hit $2 million in revenue. Were you looking for someone that was a COO before you knew Cameron? Did you meet Cameron and then you decided he had a skill set that could help you grow? Why did you decide to start building like your executive team when you were at that revenue level?
Yeah, I don't know if it was me looking to build an executive team as much as it was actually trying to find some help. There was a lot to do. I was overwhelmed. I clearly didn't have the expertise. Cameron came in as a VP. He didn't come in as a COO. He grew into that COO role. And so you don't know what you don't know at times. And as a young entrepreneur, I think when Cameron joined, I would have been in my late 20s. I just didn't even know what a COO was and what they would do. So Cameron came in, helped me put together. I created the painted picture. I created the vision of where we would go. But Cameron became this 2-in-the-box model where he was the executor, the implementer to my vision. And he was a great help in getting us to where we needed to go, from 2 million to 106 million by the time he left. And today we're almost 4 times that. So he was a key part of creating that foundation that allowed 1-800-GOT-JUNK and even O2E brands become what we are today.
Okay, awesome. So you offset some of maybe the skill sets that you needed help bolstering.
Yeah, he was able to build a team. He enjoyed hiring. He was good at it. He was great at making plans and putting them into place. Things that I just didn't enjoy doing or didn't have the skill set to do. And Cameron came in and was able to make a lot of great things happen.
Okay, great. So you mentioned something called a painted picture. Cameron talks a little bit about it in his book, Double Double, about what you guys did. But can you describe that and like what kind of impact that had on the business?
Yeah, so I created this concept called the painted picture. And I didn't know at the time that I did this, what I was creating and the power of it. But I went to my parents' summer cottage. I had just joined EO probably a year prior. And I started doing what people shouldn't do, comparing themselves to others, not healthy for your ego. I started to look around and go, wow, look at all these EO members. They've got $10 million businesses, $100 million businesses. I started to feel very inadequate with what I was building. Is the junk removal business a sexy business? No. Does it have the potential to be a massive brand and have the growth? I didn't think it did. And I certainly didn't have the money or what I thought the brains required to build the business. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go take a retreat. That's what we learned to do in EO. When you're trying to solve a creative problem, you go somewhere creative, take a retreat. I went to my parents' summer cottage. There I was on the water. I pull out this sheet of paper, 1 page, double-sided. I filled it up with a picture, a statement saying where we would be, not where we'd hope to be or we're going to try to be, but where we would be. So I said we'd be in the top 30 metros in North America by the end of 2003. I said we'd build the FedEx to junk removal. I said we'd be on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I came up with big, hairy, audacious goals that I started to list in writing to paint that picture for myself, which what it did for me, the power was I walked away from that setting going, wow, I can actually see this. I can believe in this possibility. It was so clear in my mind that I almost saw it happening as though it was a crystal ball. I then said, okay, let me share this with everyone around me, friends, family, my employees. And what was interesting is it did a couple of different things. It put people in one of 2 camps. I believe in you. I want to be a part of this. My employees who chose to stay became a part of it. But then I had another group of people who said, Brian, gee, top 30 metros, Oprah Winfrey. I mean, you're smoking the hope dope here. There's no way this is going to happen. And so I ended up going, okay, fine. If you don't see it, I do. And those people would leave. So we ended up achieving the painted picture, top 30 metros, 16 days before the 2003 deadline. All sorts of great things started to happen. And it was that power of creating a vision in your mind as an entrepreneur, as a leader, and then sharing it with those around you that made it all happen.
And you talk about that a little bit more in your book, as well as Cameron talks about it in Double Double, if anyone wants to go deeper with that. We'll get back to the show in a minute, but first a quick thanks to our sponsor, Lead Quizzes. If you want to grow your business to 7 figures and beyond, you must learn how to generate leads predictably. When I first started my business, lead generation felt like riding a roller coaster. I would have huge sales months and then months with nothing. This happened because I relied solely on referrals and networking to grow my business. Predicting growth and investing in the future were frightening because I didn't have control over my lead generation. That was before we created Lead Quizzes. Now I predictably generate leads in my sleep and have stopped worrying about where the next sale will come from. Top marketers like Neil Patel and Lewis Howes have used Lead Quizzes to increase their lead capture by up to 500%. Think about it. Quizzes are fun, engaging, and you can offer personalized feedback in exchange for your quiz taker's contact information. Lead Quizzes is a software that allows you to set up high-converting quizzes quickly without having to hire an expensive programmer. In fact, our users have generated over 3 million leads for their businesses. Take control of your lead generation today and start your 14-day free trial by going to leadquizzes.com/podcast. Brian, let's transition a little bit more. So some of the main marketing channels you used to grow this was you used PR and you used some guerrilla marketing. Can you talk about those channels a little bit and maybe some of the things that you did to be successful there?
Yeah, guerrilla marketing. It was, to me, building business without spending a ton of money on advertising. We didn't have a ton of money to spend, so we do things like paint our phone number on the side of our trucks And there we were, these big emblazoned signs with the logo 1-800-GOT-JUNK, no different than what you see with FedEx. I used to, in fact, one just went by in front of me. I love the fact that you've got this big, massive name and brand on a vehicle that's driving all over North America. What if we could do that same thing with our trucks? And they became big mobile billboards. Our phone number, 1-800-JUNK, begs the question, have you got junk? Here's the number to call. And it's been massive for our business. We did things like put on blue wigs and do what we would call a wave, where it would be a slow business day. We'd get our franchise owners to put on these blue wigs, go to the busiest intersection they could find in their city, park a truck or two, put the dump boxes up, and just start waving at people, smiling and waving. And people are like, who are these guys? What's with the blue wigs? These guys are nuts. But they'd notice us. And part of that was inspired by Seth Godin's book, Purple Cow. Seth talks about the fact that you see a black and white cow, another black and white cow, you see 10,000 of them in the countryside. But if you ever saw a purple cow, you'd talk about it, you'd remark about it, you'd tell the world, you'd put it on social media. Well, that's what we tried to do with our blue wigs. People wouldn't notice us if we were just in uniform standing beside the side of the road, but the blue wigs somehow made a big difference and got attention.
Yeah, and you guys use the same strategy at a Vancouver Canucks game.
Yeah, the Vancouver Canucks were in the playoffs, which doesn't happen very often, and they were in the finals. And we decided to get out there, and throughout the entire playoffs, we gave out blue wigs. I can't remember, they were like $1 or $2 a piece, $3 a piece. We started giving them out to people that were going into the stadium to watch the game. 3% of the stadium was wearing blue wigs. And everyone who had a blue wig on was like, how do I get one of those? Where'd you get them? And it just became a blue wig. The Canucks their colors are blue. And it was us rallying behind, and we were the team and being seen as the leadership that was giving this inspiration to the team. We ended up getting on the news 60 different times, 60, throughout Vancouver, through radio, TV, print. We had our story on the front page of the paper. We were with blue wigs, the 1-800-GOT-JUNK logoed truck, the whole bit. And you can't buy advertising like that.
Yeah, and that wasn't a sponsorship. You guys didn't ask for permission to do that, did you?
We didn't ask for permission. And I do believe that sometimes it's better to beg for forgiveness versus ask for permission. And I know Cameron and I, that was a big mantra of ours, was just get out there. Entrepreneurs break rules. Now, you don't want anyone to get hurt. You don't want to do anything dangerous. But, really, you get out there sometimes and you push the boundaries. And we had actually pulled trucks onto the stadium's property. And we had the lawyer come out from the Vancouver Canucks telling us that cease and desist and you can't do this. But what was interesting is there were 3 news stations there at the time filming 3 of us all at the same time talking to the world or talking to Vancouver. And so it was bad timing to try and kick us out. So we actually got our stories covered in the press, and then we got off the property and everyone was happy.
That's funny. Okay, so you leverage this towards like 60 appearances with PR. Did you guys, have any strategy as far as how to leverage some of these guerrilla marketing events to get maximum exposure?
I think it was just trying new things. It was doing experiments. Some worked, some didn't, but it was just getting out there constantly and trying to stand out. Again, the purple cow, just how do you get out there and get noticed, you remembered? And it was just sort of a fly by the seat of our pants type strategy, if you can call it that. We were really just young, hungry, trying to figure it out. And we do crazy things. I remember when Segways first debuted on the planet, we went and rented a bunch of them and started driving around the city with blue wigs on and 1-800-GOT-JUNK vests. And again, people are just looking at these guys going, who are they? But they noticed us and it stood out and we got remembered.
And you guys finally set up a PR department as you guys matured more, and that helped you get into Oprah and into something called The Journal, which is the 60 Minutes for Canada. How did you guys pitch stories into them, or what was the angle that you did to be able to get onto major outlets like that?
Yeah, we set up a department and we had 6 people at one point just pitching the press. Now, this was something that we worked hard at. We figured out was an easy way to tell a story and get attention. So we'd pick up the phone, we'd call the press, we'd say, I got a great story for you. And we'd just start talking. And people fell in love with the ideas, the passion that we would exhibit. And yeah, Oprah, CNN, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, you name it, we made it happen. And it just became such a fun part of building the business, telling stories, and getting them out there. Now, today, I think, we're in the storytelling age more than ever. While traditional press doesn't work in the same capacity, I mean, there's a lot of journalists that over the last bunch of years have been laid off, and everybody's a journalist, right? We're all journalists on Facebook, Instagram, wherever we want to tell stories, but it's finding new and different ways to tell stories, to get them out there, whether it's writing a book, writing a blog, or socially posting, to tell the world about the interesting and unique things that you as a leader or an entrepreneur are doing.
Okay. Awesome. So let's continue a little bit more with the story, Brian. Like, you guys got to a point where you got offered a major acquisition amount from Waste Management in the range of $75 to $100 million, which for most people is a pretty life-changing number. So how did you evaluate this decision, or maybe tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah, they wined and dined me, took me out on a boat to a big fishing resort in British Columbia, one of the most beautiful places on the planet, Sonora Lodge. And we were out there fishing, and there I was with two Waste Management execs, and they're pitching me on selling the business. And I kept saying no. I was in the middle of nowhere with these two garbage execs, feeling like, is there one too many times that I'm going to say no here and they're going to toss me overboard? I mean, no, but in all seriousness, I just thought, this is a big offer, but money can't buy happiness. What buys my happiness is growth and building something special with some great people. And I knew I wasn't done. I mean, I knew I had barely gotten started. So I could have sold the business back in that day. And here we are 4 times the size today. I'm not a money motivated guy. I'm a purpose driven guy. I love watching other people build great opportunities and take them and grow. And so what I've gained, I mean, short of any philanthropic endeavors, which is certainly an important part of life, I don't know what I would have done with that kind of money. And I didn't want to start something again because I would have rather built on the momentum of what we had already started to build.
And it seems like, I would guess that with your painted picture and constantly looking into the future, what you're creating and being excited about that, that's probably a big reason why you knew what your purpose was and you knew what you wanted to do.
100%. Yeah. So, what I would say is the painted picture is where you're going, not how to get there, and be really crystal clear on what the destination looks like. The how can come later. If you set while creating a picture, if you set the hows, you start to get overwhelmed with all the details that bring you down. That, if I set my painted picture of the top 30 metros and then started to think while I was writing the painted picture, how am I going to get there? I don't have the money. I don't have the brains. I don't have the people. I don't even know if this idea is going to work. You start to doubt things, and the painted picture of the bar gets so much lower. So my advice to entrepreneurs is be really careful when you set a painted picture. Just think big. Don't let anything else get in your way. And then you recruit someone like a Cameron Herold or an Eric Church to help you make the painted picture a reality.
Awesome. So speaking of Cameron Herold, you said you hired Cameron when you were about 2 million and worked with him up to about 100 million in revenue. So something we haven't talked a lot about on this episode or this show is having to change some of your talent and some of the people on your team member when you hit different sizes. So can you talk to me about when you got to 100 million, like, why did you decide that you needed a different COO, or it was time to change who you were working with?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeremy. If I look at the tougher moments I've had in my business, my book, WTF, Willing to Fail, I wasn't just willing to fail. I was actually failing at some points. And I look at Cameron Herold, massive success, a huge gratitude for everything he did for our business. But we were both starting to fail because the company, once it got close to 100 million in revenue and beyond, we were the wrong 2 leaders at the top. We were too ADD, both of us. We were too risk tolerant that we would just get out and just go, let's just grow this and spend money and doing things that this was becoming a bigger ship that would maneuver more slowly. This wasn't the little speedboat anymore, and things needed to change. So unfortunately, had to get Cameron out of the business. And one of the tougher WTF moments I've ever had, because I was the best man in Cameron's wedding. We were great friends. We're still actually awesome friends today. I mean, we talk all the time, and it's awesome that we've been able to repair that friendship, because the day I had to get him out of the business was a tough day, not just for him, but also myself. And I realized that I needed a more rigorous, disciplined leader to help me get to the next stage. Now, the next time, my second COO, I over-recruited and actually mishired and brought on someone who was an ex-president of Starbucks, of their US operations. And I brought this person in. And man, smart person, but the wrong person for me, not quite the blue wig spirit, not the cultural leader that I needed to work alongside me. And we started to go in different directions. And 14 months into that relationship, we had to end that one. Even though no one in my business believed that that person needed to go, I knew some things that no one else knew. I knew that we were starting to get too far off course and that I couldn't help correct it. And I knew this person didn't necessarily believe in me as an entrepreneur. So another tough decision, getting that person out. But thank goodness that that happened at that size versus where we are today, because what it had me do was reflect. I took out a sheet of paper again, because that's what I do when I'm in a tough situation. And this time I wrote down on one side, on the left side of the page, all the things in the company that had to happen that I was good at, that I'd love to do. On the right side of the page, the other side of the line that went down the middle, I said, what are all the things I'm bad at that I don't like to do in a business that a business needs? And I realized there were a lot of weaknesses and issues that I had in my leadership that I had to find someone who held those as strengths. And I created a mini painted picture of what I was looking for, and I got it out to the world. And I was so clear on what I had articulated in the need for this person that I had 3 different people, unrelated, come back to me and say, the person you describe is Eric Church. And I got in touch with this Eric Church guy who was in Toronto, not the country singer. And I got Eric out here, and we fell in love with the growth of the opportunity of what we could build together. His strengths complemented my weaknesses and vice versa. And it's been 7 years, and I certainly believe both of us hope it'll be forever. He's the guy to get us beyond $1 billion. He's taken us from just under 100 million to close to 400 million in revenue. And he's that rigorous, disciplined leader who we're able to be this 2-in-the-box model and build something much bigger and better together, and to build a big team that can help us grow this even further.
Okay, awesome. And so some of the things that you've done since then, like I mentioned in the intro, is you've expanded to some different areas, house painting, moving, and house detailing. We won't get into that too much in this interview.
Sure.
Brian, I've really enjoyed the story so far. I'd love to just jump into some final questions and then we'll wrap up the show, okay?
Sounds perfect, Jeremy.
All right. So Brian, did you experience a time that you thought 1-800-JUNK would fail? And if so, like, what did you do?
Nope. I knew it was always going to be great. Everything was perfect and never made a mistake. No, you know what? It happened all the time. It's the story I told earlier of firing the entire team. I mean, I don't know if I should have survived that downfall. You know, you take your entire company and you fire everybody. Rebuilding from that was just the toughest thing I've ever done. But I was young and hungry and tenacious, and I did it. And I think as entrepreneurs, we learn to weather the storms. One of the things I talk in my book, WTF, Willing to Fail, is that failure is temporary. You make these mistakes, failure is temporary, but also let's not forget, success is temporary. There's ups and downs. I mean, look at nature, right? The tides go in, the tides go out. The sun rises, the sun falls. Success and failure go hand in hand, and never get too cocky that you believe that you're always going to succeed, and be willing to endure the storms that you face in life.
Great answer. Okay. Next question. What's the one thing you did that had the biggest impact on your growth?
Biggest impact on my growth is, of course, the painted picture. If I didn't that day sit down and set the future vision of the company and start to believe in the future of where we were going and what the possibility looked like, never would have tried.
Awesome. You've mentioned several books on the show so far. Maybe it's one you haven't mentioned, but what's a book that has had the biggest impact on you?
There's so many. It would be hard to pick one that stands out more than others. If I'm forced to choose here, I'd say The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. People don't fail, systems do, is really the philosophy that you learn from that book. Build your business out, ready to scale by having the right systems in place to recruit the right people, train the right people, and so on. And I've been fortunate enough that Michael and I become great friends. He's an 82-year-old mentor of mine who has contributed so much to our success.
Okay, great. And if you could go back in time and start over, what would you tell yourself, Brian?
I wouldn't go back and start over. I don't think that's possible. But people often ask the question, if you could change one thing, what would you change? Absolutely nothing. I've needed to learn every lesson that I've ever learned in this business in my life to get me to that next stage. So when I talk about the Starbucks exec failure, that was painful. I was in a pretty deep, dark depression there for a short period. I needed to learn that tough lesson so that I could find Eric Church, who now has made this company what it is today.
Awesome. All right. Well, if you're listening to this episode, you like this interview, I would recommend checking out Brian's new book, WTF Willing to Fail. We'll get a link of it on Amazon in our show notes. I read the whole thing. It's only a couple hours, very easy read. And besides your book, where's the best place people can learn more about your brands or connect with you?
Any of the social media, you can go to Instagram at Brian Scudamore. I'm all over social. Our website is o2ebrands.com, which stands for ordinary to exceptional. And happy to help anyone I ever can. If anyone wants to see a painted picture of ours, go on Instagram, send me a direct message, and I'll fire you off a sample of our painted picture. And I appreciate you having me on your show, and enjoy your energy and all the questions you've asked. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks again for listening to our show this week. If you want to find out more or hear previous episodes, you can go to blog.leadquizzes.com. If you'd like to start generating more leads for your business and get a 14-day free trial to Lead Quizzes, go to leadquizzes.com/podcast. Please also subscribe to our show on Apple or however you get your podcasts. You can also write us at support@leadquizzes.com. I'm Jeremy Ellens, and you've been listening to Journey to Seven Figures.